2:14 a.m., Bryansk Oblast, Western Russia. The temperature sits just below freezing. A freight train rolls east at a steady 60 kilometers per hour, its diesel engines humming through the darkness. It carries mixed military cargo, fuel tankers, sealed containers, flatbeds loaded with armored vehicles, moving from depots near the Belarusian border toward logistics hubs feeding the southern front. The bridge ahead has stood here since the Soviet era. Reinforced concrete, steel trusses, routinely inspected, routinely trusted. Tonight, nothing looks out of place. The train crew follows procedure. No lights beyond regulation, no radio chatter beyond scheduled check-ins. Russian rail doctrine assumes predictability equals safety. This line has not been struck in months. Air defenses cover nearby cities, not empty river crossings. The bridge is not considered a high-risk point. It never is, until it is. Several kilometers away, on the Ukrainian side of the border, a small team watches a live feed. The image is grainy, monochrome, stabilized by software running on ruggedized tablets. They are not watching the bridge, they are watching the train. More precisely, they are watching the gap between rail cars, counting axles, identifying cargo types by heat signature and weight distribution. This is not an ambush born of urgency. It is the final step of a plan weeks in the making. Ukraine has learned, often the hard way, that striking the obvious target too early wastes opportunity. Destroying a bridge before the cargo crosses only delays movement. Destroying it after the cargo crosses forces Russia to reroute, but destroying it while the cargo is on the structure turns infrastructure into a weapon against itself. That requires patience, timing, and certainty. At 2:17, the train enters the bridge. The span stretches 430 meters across a narrow river, supported by concrete pylons sunk deep into the riverbed. Soviet engineers designed it to carry heavy loads continuously. What they did not design it to withstand is a shaped charge detonated at a structural node, while a 3,000-ton train is mid-span. The Ukrainian team does not act yet. They let the lead locomotive clear the first third of the bridge. They wait for the center of mass to shift forward, for the fuel tankers to align over the main supports. They wait for the train to commit, when braking distance and inertia make escape impossible. This is not guesswork. The calculations were done days earlier. At 2:19 and 40 seconds, the order is given. Not shouted, not dramatic, just confirmed. The weapon used is not exotic. A long-range, ground-launched strike system, adapted from existing Ukrainian stocks, guided by inertial navigation corrected by satellite updates. Range just over 300 kilometers. Flight time measured in minutes. The missile descends steeply, not to maximize blast, but to ensure penetration. It strikes the bridge at a joint where steel meets concrete, precisely where stress is already highest. The explosion is contained, directional. There's no fireball visible for kilometers. What fails first is not the bridge deck, but the support integrity. The blast shears reinforcement bars, fractures concrete around the pylon head. The bridge does not collapse instantly. For a fraction of a second, it tries to hold. Then the weight of the train finishes the job. The central span drops several meters, twisting as it goes. Rail cars jackknife. 2 fuel tankers rupture on impact, spilling diesel into the river below. Armored vehicles break free from their restraints, slamming into each other with enough force to deform steel hulls. The locomotive, already past the strike point, derails but remains upright, its crew alive but trapped. The sound reaches nearby villages seconds later, a deep metallic collapse followed by secondary explosions as pressurized containers fail. Power lines along the rail corridor go dark. Communications cut out. For several minutes, there is no clear understanding of what has happened. Russian emergency protocols activate automatically. Local authorities assume an accident. Bridge failures happen. Trains derail. But as reports come in, burning cargo, military equipment destroyed, the bridge span completely severed, the picture changes. This is not an accident. This is a targeted strike deep inside Russian territory. Within an hour, satellite imagery confirms the damage. The bridge is unusable, not damaged, erased as a functional crossing. Repairs will take months, not days. Temporary spans are possible only after debris removal and riverbed stabilization. In the meantime, the rail line is dead. This bridge mattered because of what ran across it every night. It was part of a logistics artery feeding ammunition, fuel, and replacement vehicles toward units engaged hundreds of kilometers away. Russian doctrine relies heavily on rail transport for bulk movements. Trucks handle the last stretch, but rails carry the the weight. When rails stop, everything downstream feels it. The economic impact is immediate and measurable. The destroyed cargo alone represents tens of millions of dollars. Armored vehicles damaged beyond repair, fuel lost, specialized rail cars written off. But the real cost is not the equipment, it is the disruption. Trains scheduled behind this one are halted. Rerouted lines add hundreds of kilometers and days of delay. Fuel consumption rises, maintenance cycles break. Timing is where the strike becomes decisive. Ukraine does not hit during an offensive, it hits during preparation. Russian units expecting resupply now wait. Commanders begin rationing fuel. Training rotations pause. Offensive timelines slip quietly, without announcements, without headlines. This is how logistics warfare works, not with dramatic collapses, but with accumulating friction. The psychological effect is harder to quantify, but no less real. Russian planners believed interior rail infrastructure was relatively safe beyond a certain distance from the front. Air defenses are positioned to protect cities, bases, airfields, bridges, and sparsely populated areas are guarded lightly, if at all. This strike forces a re-evaluation. Every crossing becomes a potential vulnerability, every train a risk.
Doctrinally, this changes behavior. Trains begin stopping short of bridges, moving in shorter segments. Security detachments increase, slowing movement further. Engineers are reassigned to inspections instead of new construction. All of this consumes time and manpower, resources already stretched thin. Globally, militaries are watching closely. This is not about Ukraine or Russia alone. It is about how modern warfare treats infrastructure. Precision strike capabilities, once reserved for air campaigns, are now applied surgically to logistics networks. Patience becomes a weapon. Intelligence becomes more valuable than firepower. The lesson is uncomfortable for large industrial militaries. Size and redundancy no longer guarantee safety. Predictable systems create predictable targets. A bridge that has carried trains for 50 years can become a liability in a single night if an adversary understands timing better than you do. By dawn, the river below the bridge is slick with fuel. Engineers arrive and begin assessing damage. They already know the answer. This crossing will not reopen soon. Somewhere far from the site, Ukrainian analysts mark the operation complete. No celebration, just confirmation. The train was allowed to pass because destruction was not the goal. Commitment was. Once the cargo was on the bridge, the outcome was inevitable. This was not a strike of desperation or spectacle. It was a controlled application of modern warfare's quiet truth. Wars are not decided only by what you destroy, but by when you choose to do it.